Would you fight a dragon for your friends? An impenetrable, fire-breathing, venomous dragon? Would you do it for a coworker? Well, we're going to be talking about that, sort of. Today, as part of our All Readings Count series, we're talking about the epic Beowulf. I am one of your co-hosts, Joshua Noel. You don't care about me. I'm only really here to announce the greatest co-host of all time, the one and only TJ Tiberius Juan Blackwell. Oh, that's the wrong one. Thanks for hosting this, TJ.
Yeah, no problem. No problem.
All right, guys. Before anything else, we're just going to talk a little bit about what the last piece of literature that you read. Man, this is annoying for me because, like, for those who don't know, I'm an ADHD person. So currently, I have a physical book that I'm reading beside my bed, as well as my Kindle that does colors beside my bed, where I'm reading like 2 different graphic novels. And then I have my Kindle in the other room where I'm reading 2 other separate books. So I don't really know how to answer this. I'm reading like 6 books right now.
Yeah, but which one did you read last?
I want to say probably I've been rereading the Tao Te Ching, the graphic novelization of it. Yeah, so probably that. Because I do that most mornings the last few months. Yeah,
So-
it's very peaceful.
So graphic novel.
Yeah, I suppose. It's a weird one. I feel like it shouldn't count as a graphic novel. Because it's like one page is words and then the next page will be a picture. Usually the pictures are relevant and kind of cool. And then sometimes I'm like, why are these all white people? Anyway. What about you?
Manga.
Yeah, but what manga?
Oh, Shangri-La Frontier.
What's
Yeah,
that?
it's really good.
Okay. You know, someone who really likes Japanese culture, it's a shame how much I just don't understand most of the words. Yeah. I just think it looks cool. Sounds pretty. Anyway, if you're on a laptop, guys, please consider rating and reviewing our show on Podchaser or Good Pods. Specifically, one of those two. Those really help our show gain recognition, and it makes it easier for search engines. Google likes those. So, like, if you rate us on those, it makes Google care more, which helps us out. But if you're on your phone, you're not on a laptop, then consider rating, reviewing, or commenting on our show on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. Those are the 2 most prominently used podcasting apps. So if you use that, it's going to prioritize our show in those apps. And again, make it easier for other people to find the show. So we thank you guys so much for your support in advance. These are just free ways that you help the show a whole lot. So you guys rock. One way that's not as free, for like $3 or more, you can sponsor our show on Apple Podcasts, Captivate, or Patreon. And Russell Gentry has done that. So shout out to Russell. And if you guys want your own shout out, remember again, you can also support the show on one of those 3 platforms. Be like Russell. He's cool. Everyone should try to be like him, in my humble opinion. Also, we want to let listeners know you can check out all of our All Reading Counts episodes. Down below, there will be a link if you want to see other episodes that are part of this series, where we're just talking about reading and why reading matters, no matter the format, I guess. Is that how you would word that? Anyway. But if you purchase any of our All Reading Count merchandise on the website that's in the link below, if you go to our store, you find anything that says All Reading Counts on it, anything from those purchases, we take the profits and donate them to local libraries. Also, our Patreon bonus question at the end of this is a standalone that you can buy separately. And if you do that, we will also send the funds to your local library, or our local library, probably. If you live in the same area as me, it works out. Yeah.
Yeah, we're just funding our own libraries.
Yeah, I just want more books
Somewhat
to read.
personal gain, yeah.
All right. With that, we could go ahead and jump into the main section. And today we're discussing again Beowulf. Before we do, though, All Reading Counts. That's the name of the series. We're going to talk about what that means and why it's important to us. I actually I listed some of the benefits of reading. This is why it's important to me. And we're going to do a little bit more the next episode of this in a couple months when me and Andy are going to do an audiobook. Because some people say it doesn't count, and I think it does because there's certain benefits of reading that are very specific to reading that you still get in audiobooks, as well as epics, which is what we're here to talk about today. So some of the benefits: you reduced stress, improved focus and concentration, improved cognitive skills, decreased risk of early onset Alzheimer's and dementia, better writing skills, improves your memory, increases your vocabulary, improves empathy and ability to engage with people with other perspectives than your own, and many, many more. Are there any benefits of reading that I didn't list that you can think of, TJ?
Make smarter.
Yeah, make smarter. Yeah. And by reading epics, which I think epics are a little bit easier to read because like they're in poem form, so you go through pages quicker, which makes you
Yeah.
feel like you're doing more.
Yeah, even like Gilgamesh even isn't that long. But you know,
But it sounds impressive. Like really,
Yeah.
you didn't read all that much, but it's like I read Beowulf, and it sounds like
yeah,
you read a hefty book, you know?
yeah, because most of the time if you see Beowulf, it's like thick because it's got a commentary in it, a few indexes, all kinds of stuff. But like, let's see, this is my copy of Beowulf, and it's like, let's see, this much of it is actually Beowulf. That's
This is
it.
one where it really helps if you're on YouTube.
That's
But it
Beowulf.
sounds like you read a whole lot.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, it's not like it's light reading. It's definitely not light reading. But it's also just kind of like, I don't know, makes you feel more accomplished than I think you actually did, probably.
It's a comfy medium reading.
Yeah. And helps your cognitive skills if you're worried about early onset Alzheimer's. This is great. A lot of people think Alzheimer's is really just like type 3 diabetes. So maybe eat less sugar and then read more.
Yeah.
It'll be all right. Maybe. You know, no guarantees. We would offer your money back, but we donate it to the library. And also, we don't make money. So there's that.
Yeah.
All right. So, DJ, how would you define an epic? We talked a little bit about it just then anyway, but if there was like a proper definition, do you have a proper definition? Or do you just kind of have a, this is what my gut says it is?
So, to me, an epic is a story with age, written poetically, that is about a hero. So,
Yeah. Yeah, that's fair. I personally, I want to get rid of the age part. I understand why it's there, and I think it's technically should be there by how we define it. I just like the idea of people still writing stuff like this. So like, I want to get rid of the word age so that maybe someone will be inspired to go write an epic. Also, it would just be cool. Imagine if I was a good writer, I could just go write an epic. That'd be pretty epic.
yeah,
Yeah,
you can still try.
it's true. I mean, eventually it'll get old.
It'll be an epic one day.
As long as people keep reading it. We just gotta find a way to threaten everyone to keep reading my stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. What if I see now my brain's like getting into weird territory of like if because you know a lot of this stuff, this is still gonna be relevant. 'Cause a lot of stuff back in the day, ancient writings, a lot of times borrowed from one another freely. There wasn't really copyright things. It was like, oh, hey, that's cool. What if I did my own spin on the story? And then eventually once part of it stuck, and that's the part that we know today. You know, like a lot of like Gilgamesh and different stuff existed before our biblical account stories of like a flood. But what's the one we know today? We know the Bible one, right? So like that's pretty common. So my brain's like, I wonder if I can write a poetic form version of everything that happens in Kingdom Hearts. Then maybe in 100 years, that'll be the only version people remember.
Yeah. No. See,
Yeah.
what happens is you can write that, and then
And then get
Square
sued.
Enix will kill you with a baseball bat. Probably.
Yeah. Well, plus Disney's involved. I might get sniped beforehand. It really just
Yeah.
depends.
Yeah. So you can definitely try that.
Yeah.
But-
I mean, I love both companies, but I do realize they will never let me use their work for anything that doesn't just directly profit them.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, so we're going to get into the story of Beowulf. Let's start with kind of summarizing the plot. So we're going to break this up into 3 different sections. We're going to talk about Grendel. We're going to talk about Grendel's mother, because Grendel, for some reason, is the only bad guy that gets a name. Then we're going to talk about the dragon. First up, Grendel. Could you, TJ, summarize the story of Grendel?
So, Grendel, big, evil, ugly, horrendously strong. Basically, the heroes of the story, the champions, the skilled links of Hrothgar. They built a nice big mead hall called Hailrot. It's gorgeous. It's huge. Everyone loves it.
Yeah.
Everyone goes and gets super drunk.
It's actually where we're going to have Theology Beer Camp 2025.
Yeah. And then Grendel doesn't like that. Living up in his swamp above the skilledlings, and then he starts to do something about it. Every time they party, Grendel comes down, kills a bunch of people, eats a bunch of people. And that they abandoned Hailrot because of that. Yada yada. Hailrot lies dormant for like 12 years. And then Beowulf shows up. And he's like, hey, I'm the greatest person of all time.
He hadn't met TJ.
I'm going to kill that thing that's been terrorizing your awesome meat hall for you. And then he does that. Exactly that. He was right. He wasn't lying at all.
I love that version of it. That's so funny. I mean, that really is basically what happens. You know, everybody just gets murdered by a demon. One dude just shows like, you know what? I bet I could take him.
Yeah.
Then he does.
He shows up with his resume. He's like, my name, Beowulf. I killed a bunch of sea monsters just swimming around in my armor with a sword.
Yeah, just for funsies.
Just for funsies. I'm the strongest person alive. I will kill the demon terrorizing you with no weapons. So let's go throw a party.
Yeah. What's funny is, like, for me, some of the details are way more interesting than the story, I feel like.
Yeah.
Because, like, reading it, you find out that Grendel is, like, one of the ancestors of Cain, the original murderer. And it's just straight up, the story's like, hey, we're going to incorporate the Bible into this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that is something that has been contended before about Beowulf, because the story is so old that it starts to become unlikely that there were themes of Christianity in it originally. So some people think that the Christian themes were just added in by a Christian transcriber at some point.
Yeah. So, like, whenever I write my epic of Kingdom Hearts, and instead of, at the end when Sora points out that there's light in every heart, I just point out that there's Jesus in every heart.
Yep.
And now everyone thinks that's in the story.
Yep.
Yeah. Perfect.
Really that, yeah.
Genius.
Actually,
I'm gonna try that.
That's so much closer than it should be. That's
but okay. But going
fits.
with the version that we have a version that does tie in God and this biblical account really heavily. I find that interesting. Even if it's not in the original story, I find it really interesting, this idea of, like, all 3 parts, like the 3 baddies we're going to talk about, they're all, like, given a reason. And I think what's weird today is if we give a villain, like, a purpose or something, we give them, like, motivation, it's always, like, something sympathetic. Like, they weren't born evil, they became evil. Like, we always go with the nurture side. And this story is straight up like, no, he was born evil, but here's why he was born evil. And I'm like, you know what? I could accept that. That's kind of cool.
Yeah. Yeah, this story predates every other English story you've ever read, so
Yeah.
The tropes are kind of young here. So there's no, like,
Not really tropes yet.
yeah, they didn't, like, turn evil or get redeemed. No, these things are just evil.
Yeah. Sometimes I miss that. Like, bad guy bad, beat him up.
Yeah.
Then get drunk. Yeah. And for those who don't know, like, Lord of the Rings, Middle Earth, all the stuff that Tolkien did heavily pulls from Beowulf. This was, like, Tolkien's favorite story. Even Lewis pulls some from what we're going to talk about later with like the dragons and the friends of Beowulf. But like Tolkien very much relies on the story of Beowulf. And from my perspective, he makes a much more nuanced story with Middle Earth. And then what's interesting is like then you have a lot of things that we're familiar with today, like Harry Potter or that thing how dragons and kings.
How to
and
Train Your Dragon?
Nope. Game of Thrones.
Oh.
Yeah. A lot of those really came from Tolkien stuff. And some people think improved. A lot of people think it did it worse, which is probably what happened when Lord of the Rings came out. There's probably a lot of people who are like, that's not as good as the original Beowulf. You know, just is how it is. But it's fun because like a lot of the stories we're familiar with today, this is like the granddaddy of their story.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Tolkien also had wrote an entire essay about why translating Beowulf is annoying, which is really
Wait,
funny.
what?
Mm-hmm.
That's funny. One of
Yeah,
my
you should read it. It's called
actually,
On
it's not
Translating
one of
Beowulf.
my actual favorite translation of Beowulf is Tolkien's, and I
Yeah.
think I need to read that now because that sounds like I would laugh very, very heavily.
Yeah.
Yeah. But no, okay. So that was one of the themes here that was really interesting, just kind of like how he is born evil. The other thing that was interesting to me that I think probably was more part of the original story, given the like honor shame culture of most ancient civilization. Anyway, but there's this whole thing of like the whole reason he's able to beat Grendel is because he decided not to use a weapon, because there's some kind of like curse or something on Grendel where like weapons don't really work on him. So it's so weird to me because usually in like modern day stories, the way this would have went down is he's like, I can beat him without a weapon, gets really arrogant, and then he loses because he was full of himself, right? But here's like, I can beat him without a weapon, and it's like, yeah, no, that's why everybody else was losing. They kept using weapons. And it's like, oh, okay. What do I do with that, DJ? Should I be more arrogant?
You're not Beowulf.
Oh, okay.
No, Beowulf, they're chilling in the meat hall, plotting on Grendel, and someone's like, yeah, Beowulf has the hand strength of 30 men.
That's insane.
30. His
I
hands
mean,
are strong as 30 men's.
That might be TJ. As much as you play Valorant, you know,
No.
you really work out those finger muscles.
No. Rock climbers.
Oh yeah, yeah. No, so the arrogance thing aside, because I don't really think that was the point. I think the point, and this could be me reading Tolkien backwards into Beowulf. So maybe TJ will correct me. I know a lot of Tolkien stuff was he felt like we were relying too much on industry, on technology, that kind of stuff. You know, technology has meant different things at different times. At one point, technology meant sword and rope. Now, when someone says they're afraid of technology, they mean AI, but they're cool with cell phones.
Yeah.
It's weird. It's a weird world we live in.
Yeah, I still mean sword and rope.
Yeah. I mean fire. Fire's scary. But so for Tolkien, when he wrote, he's talking about getting back to the simple life. That's why the hobbits are always the heroes of the story. That's why at the end of, Sauron experimenting and using like lava and making these weapons and doing industry, Saruman, sorry, he was the bad guy. And then at the end, Saruman's the one that gets defeated, and the Shire goes back to being peaceful without the industry being involved. And I kind of, again, maybe I'm reading this backwards into it. It's kind of interesting that the swords, the technology, all the stuff that mankind made that we're like, oh yeah, we can defeat nature with this. It's like, no, actually, that stuff just doesn't work on demons.
Yeah. I also think it's part of just who Beowulf is. Because he's coming at this, like, viewing Grendel as an opponent, like he would anyone else. So, in that same vein, he doesn't want to go in with what he sees as an advantage.
True. And yeah, and that makes a good point too, because it's also, this is still kind of setting the story up. This isn't the crescendo. This is, hey, letting you kind of know who Beowulf is. He's a dude who finds a demon and beats him with his hands. Gets in a boxing match and beats the crap out of him. Yeah. All right then. You think you're ready to move on to the next one then, or do you got other thoughts?
No, I mean, Grendel is the part that most people know, because a lot of people
Watch the movie.
well, a lot of people have read Beowulf, and then a lot of people have watched the movie from like 2007, or any of the other Beowulf adaptations.
I've never watched the movie.
Really?
Yeah, isn't that weird?
You should.
I want to. I meant to before we did this. Then I didn't.
You should at least watch like Grendel.
There's just a movie called Grendel.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah.
Well, someone wrote a book called Grendel, and then
Oh.
it's been made into a movie like twice. Actually, if you want to like show that again, this one on the right is from the one I'm talking about, where Jim Henson designed Grendel.
What?
Yeah.
When did he use his version of Grendel?
Yeah, it was like 1988.
What? How
Or
am
something
I
like that.
unfamiliar with this? I love when
There's a
moments like this
ton.
happen on a podcast. I feel like it's really weird for everyone that's not me. This is wild. I need to see this now.
That's pretty good.
Yeah. Anyway. Well, I'm glad we brought that up because I didn't know that. I've almost exclusively have read the books, read where Tolkien talked about the book, or I think that's basically it. Oh, listen to audiobooks of it. There's several versions of audiobooks on Beowulf.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't capture the same thing, though. We're going to get into that later because, like, something about poetic story doesn't translate into audiobook. Poetry itself in audiobook is fine because you can just hear the rhymes. It's like, oh, that's cool. But something about when it's in story form and it's poetry, I feel like you just lose something because whoever does the narration is more focused on the story than the fact that it's also a poem.
Yeah. You just got to be careful reading Beowulf because most of the poem is in a alliterative poem and not with a rhyme scheme, unless he's trying to be dramatic.
Yeah. Which is
So
always
some
fun.
translations lose that.
Yeah,
It feels a lot less like a poem.
that's true. In fact, the popular one that I think is probably the worst one, but easiest to read. What's that? It's like Seam something. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Seamus Heaney?
Yeah.
No, you're crazy.
I don't like that one. I just feel like he doesn't. I don't know. He doesn't lean into why it was written the way it was as much as I would like. We'll talk about it later. For now, let's jump into Grendel's mother. Yeah, there's a lot of the mother stories in literature and especially TV shows for some reason. I personally just like the fact that she's always just named Grendel's mother in this story.
Mm-hmm. That's
She,
what
she doesn't
is?
get a name. Yeah, why would she need a name? That's crazy.
Like, she's not really done much, but Grendel? Grendel was a
Yeah.
problem.
Yeah, but she has her own. Like, she's like the second act. Could you kind of unpack for us what is this part of the story with Grendel's mother about?
So, basically, Grendel's mother finds out that her son got his arm ripped off and bled to death. Not a big fan of that.
Whoa.
Yeah, by the way, spoiler alert, that's how Beowulf wins that fight. He rips off Grendel's arm
With his bare hands.
with his bare hands.
Oh, sorry, human hands.
Yeah. No, they're bear's hands. He
At
borrowed
that
them.
point, yeah.
Yeah. But Grendel's mom, finds out and then kills Hrothgar's advisor and puts his head up outside her lair. So, they've already got Beowulf here, so they're like, hey, Beowulf, go kill her. And that's pretty much what happens. And then we actually get exposed to the fact that, like, him earlier bragging about how he's the strongest swimmer of all time and just generally unkillable comes true. Because, like, she's a lake witch. And he has to swim through a bunch of monsters and, go kill her that way.
Yeah.
Also played by Angelina Jolie in that movie, which is really funny.
That is crazy. I didn't know that. That also makes me want to watch it a little bit more. But yeah, for some reason, whenever I read this time around, because I read it like back in high school, then again in college. But when I read it for this particular thing, I've read it 3 times in the last like 2 months. Because for some reason I thought I needed 2 months to get through an epic because I forgot. Because again, epics sound like they're really big, I forgot that they're not. So I just read it a lot because I gave myself way too much time to read this. Every time I've read it, I just imagine Luffy swimming and just punching like the sea monsters that are in One Piece and just one hit killing them all, you know?
Yeah, Beowulf does use his sword though.
Yeah.
Pretty
And Luffy can't swim, so there's
Yeah.
also that.
Well, you could have swum in this. This was a lake.
True. Anyway, I'm sorry for this sidebar, but it just occurred to me that Luffy, if he visited the world of Kingdom Hearts, would never be able to eat sea salt ice cream. What a tragedy.
I just don't think that's true.
The sea salt wouldn't bother him?
No.
As long as there's not actual sea in it?
Yeah.
All right, our next What If episode. What if Luffy visited Kingdom Hearts and ate sea salt ice cream? Side tangent aside, I'm very ADHD. My medicine isn't kicked in yet. It's too early. I took it right before this. It'll kick in soon, probably. Yeah. So Grendel's mother, it's interesting. It's a basic revenge plot where the revenge doesn't happen because good guy is strong. I feel like there wasn't a ton to this part of the story. Like, I really just didn't get much out of it. Revenge bad? Is that the point? Or is the point that Beowulf cool?
Yeah, Beowulf's him.
Okay. Yeah. So it doesn't have anything to do with revenge at all. It just happens that she wanted revenge. But the point is just that Beowulf is cool.
Yeah, the point is check out this cool hero story.
Yeah. All right.
You know,
Sick.
that super demon witch, no problem.
Yeah.
Small problem, actually. So, like, Beowulf doesn't... Like, it's not as easy as he thought it'd be. He goes down there with his family heirloom printing, and that has killed, like, a ton of men. And, you know, he almost loses this fight, actually. But there was another sword in Grendel's mother's cave
Oh, yeah. That was so cool.
that he's able to use, which is just, like, huge. It's, like, made for giants. And he's like, oh, I'll use that. Just cuts her head off.
My next what if story. What if Roronoa or Zoro used that sword? Could be cool. Also, I feel like Beowulf's old enough. They probably actually could do that in One Piece if they wanted to.
I hope so.
Yeah, that'd be fun.
Pretty sure they can do whatever they want.
Yeah. I mean, who's going to
That's
stop them?
Japanese copyright law. Beowulf's 1,000 years old.
True. So one thing that's brought up in both of these things so far. So like the mead hall was in trouble. We bring back the mead hall. Everybody's able to get drunk again. Hooray! Mom gets mad. We have to go beat her up, and everyone's able to get drunk again. Hooray! A lot of the story talks about some of these, like a little bit of like socio-political stuff that's going on in the background. Like it's not like brought into the forefront that much, but it's there. I don't understand all of it, but I know the Danes get talked about a lot. Could you maybe tell us who the Danes are and like how those parts of the story really add to the overall narrative that's going down? I think you're muted.
There's a lot going on here. So the Danes and the Thanes and the Wieldlings and the Skildlings, and it gives us historical context for, like, you know, this is our setting, and this is also, like, at the time Beowulf was written, this would not have been very far in the past. So it just gives us a lot of insight into, like, how these types of societies might have worked. There's a ton of research on this, and Beowulf gets used a lot to, like, point out structure and that kind of thing. So it helps a lot. It makes Beowulf a little bit of a historical text. Not really, because it is poetry. And as far as I'm aware, Beowulf is not a true story.
Yeah, 50% of it's not a true story.
At least a little bit of it's not true.
The demons and dragons are real.
Yeah. Yeah, Beowulf's just not.
Yeah, all the bad parts are real. It's just there are no heroes in the real world. Okay. Anyway, I was going to start listing villains we're stuck with in real life, and I realized that could be problematic. Maybe I shouldn't yet.
Yeah.
It'll come out later. It actually will, because we're talking about honor a little bit, and I feel like it is important to note how a lot of our leaders are completely devoid of honor, but that's later. I guess my only real question is, because I'm still kind of confused, who are the Danes? Are these really just Danish people? Is that all it is?
Yeah.
they're made to sound so important in the story. Like it's like I should just know who the Danes are, you know?
Yeah, you should.
But just because they're Danish, not because they're like cool or anything.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Good to know. All right, moving on to the dragon. That's why we really show up. I'm surprised that this isn't the part everyone knows about because like the dragon's way cooler than the rest to me.
Yeah,
I like dragons. I love dragons. Dragons are fun. Yeah. So could you again tell us what happened? Because like there's a big gap between Grendel's mother and then the dragon story.
Yeah, it's
could you
50
kind of like
years.
tell us why there's such a gap and then kind of unpack this part of the story for us a little bit?
So, the dragon comes 50 years after Beowulf battles Grendel's mom. It's not related to Grendel and his mother. It's just someone went, found this dragon's lair, stole one cup, and the dragon got super, super mad. So, they're off celebrating, doing something. And then the dragon, they find out, is terrorizing their, head rot. And then he's like, yeah, I guess I could kill a dragon now that I'm like 80. So he goes and fights the dragon.
That really is. He's like, I'm 80. I could do this.
Yeah. Yeah, he goes and fights the dragon, and this is the first time that Beowulf ever, like, loses. He's always losing. So he goes to fight the dragon. He says he'll do it alone. And
Yeah.
he needs to get a little bit of help from Wiglaf, one of his closest companions. But Beowulf does die, which he's 80, and killed the dragon.
Yeah.
So,
Mostly.
yeah. And that's pretty much how the story ends. He goes, fights the dragons. The Geats are like, well, that was the greatest person who's ever going to live.
Yeah.
And they
like
just
ever.
give him a great big Viking funeral pyre.
Yeah. Wait till I write the sequel when they meet someone even cooler. TJ, Tiberius, Juan. They all drop their swords, pick up mics, and that's why there's so many podcasts today. They realize how much cooler TJ was than Beowulf. No, but in all seriousness, I for me, it kind of feels like the rest of the story might exist just for this story. If Grendel isn't about why we should be weary of technology and industry, then I feel like the point of Grendel and Grendel's mother is to tell us, no, it's actually a really big deal that this guy almost lost. Like he just one punch KO'd demons.
Yeah.
Like this is a big fight.
Yeah, and he's also 80.
Yeah, he's also 80. Isn't there like one point where he's like he regrets that he has to use a weapon? He wishes he could just do this with his bare hands too.
Yeah.
He's like, I wish I could do this with my bare hands, but I guess I'll use a weapon.
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought that was kind of funny. The thing about him, the way he loses though, so it's so interesting. So he tries to go out alone, and this is the thing that Lewis picks up on, and I'm like a huge C.S. Lewis fan, even though I don't like Narnia. So that's where I get excited about the things that Lewis got excited about because he told me so. You know, it's my little C.S. Lewis cult that I'm forming. But
Oh, you did not form that.
oh, perfect, good. I'm just slowly joining it. We are one. Anyway, but the thing that's really interesting. So he goes out. He almost loses. Side note: one of the details I find really interesting. The whole reason he dies is because when the dragon scratched him or bit him or whatever, turns out there's venom. It's a venomous fire-breathing dragon. Because fire breathing and being impenetrable just clearly wasn't enough to make it terrifying.
Yeah, I mean, if I had the option to also make my claws venomous, I would.
Yeah, I mean, why not?
I respect that from the dragon. That's
Yeah, but yeah, so dragons, and I don't know if this is like what made this a thing, but in most lore, dragons are just really territorial over gold. They go out and find shiny things, they hoard it in a cave. That's what dragons do, unless you're in Game of Thrones, who just clearly doesn't understand dragons. But that's a side note. I just really don't like Game of Thrones. I'm sorry, guys. But also, another sidebar, I actually think My Little Pony does it fantastic. Their dragons are great and entertaining.
all right.
Yeah. Yeah. Anyway, dragon comes out. He's fighting the dragon. He's about to lose. All of the people see that Beowulf's about to lose, and like a ton of them are like, oh, if it's going to beat him, I better run. And there's only like a handful of people who are like, actually, you know what? He's done a lot for us. What if, like, we didn't just completely suck and we went to hell? And, like, there's a moment after the dragon thing where, like, I forget, do they hug or kiss or, like, what do they do? There's some form of affection that happens, and that's what stands out to C.S. Lewis when he reads the story. But I don't remember if it was a hug or a kiss.
Oh, you should have remembered that.
I should.
I was reading Cool Dragon Fight.
Oh. I thought you would remember. Yeah, after Cool Dragon Fight, there's just, they show each other affection. And that's one of the things that C.S. Lewis brings out in The Four Loves, because he's like, who reads this story, sees that they show affection to one another, and then goes, wow, that's totally gay. Because Lewis was pointing out how, like, a lot of times people use this kind of thing about homosexuality or, like, whatever to act like men shouldn't show affection towards other men. And then he's like, I don't think there's a person in the universe who's read Beowulf and didn't think these guys were manly, you know? You know? No one questioned their sexuality or anything. And TJ and I, and about half of your systematic geekology crew, are, like, supportive of gay marriage. We're all for LGBTQ rights. The other half don't hate gay people. They think it's a sin. It's a whole other thing. I won't represent their views here because I'm not them. But yeah, we don't think anything about that is negative. But at the same time, I don't think you can read the story and think there was anything romantic involved. And, like, there's actually just a power to friendship. So I think this part of the story really brings out both the power of friendship, also shows you, like, what honor is actually about. Because, like, clearly the people who ran away was like, oh, if they got him, yeah, they have no honor.
Which, I mean, to be fair, that's a perfectly reasonable thing to think. Like, that thing killed Beowulf?
Yeah.
I'm leaving.
So true.
They killed Beowulf. Who am I?
And that's where I've been, and I mentioned earlier, I've been reading the Tao Te Ching a lot more this year. So I've always liked Taoism. It wasn't until this year I started embracing the term Christian Taoist. And I think, keep in mind, I still read the Bible 13 times a year, but I think since October, I've probably read the Tao Te Ching more than I've read the Bible, which is a lot for me. And one of the things that I find really interesting is, like, just this focus on, like, maybe you don't need to be reasonable all the time. Maybe you can just see what the way is and just do it. So, like, and there's even, like, a warning of being too smart about things a lot of the times in the Tao Te Ching. So Lao Tzu would talk about, and I think if Lao Tzu read this, which he might have, I don't know, he would see this as, yeah, they filled themselves up too much. They knew what was the smartest thing to do was to run away. But the right thing to do was to just find the way. And the way was to stand with Beowulf. And I think that, like, that part of the story, like the way, what is honorable, what is good, sometimes is void of what is smart. You know, like, clearly fighting a dragon because dragon's pissed off that someone stole a cup. Yeah, that's not a smart thing to do. But I think in this instance, given who Beowulf was, standing with Beowulf, even if it means you're probably going to die, is probably the right thing to do, because Beowulf was such, like, it even talked about, like, in his 50 years of leadership, how he was just a really good king too. Like, he wasn't just strong, he was actually just a just and good king also. Just all around the best person.
Yeah, greatest person of all time.
Yeah, except for TJ. Yeah, I really feel like I'm going to do my own translation and just write it exactly the same as Tolkien, but add asterisks that just say except for TJ. No one will know who I'm talking about, but it's fine. I mean, people who listen to our podcast will know, and that's probably it.
Yeah, for now.
Yeah, for now. I just hope someone would read that translation and think I meant Thomas J. Ord. That'd be kind of funny.
It would be kind of funny.
Yeah. But yeah, so for you, these themes of, like, honor, friendship, that kind of stuff, like, what stands out to you in this part of the story where we kill a freaking dragon, man?
I mean, that's what we get out of a lot of older literature is, you know, companionship of, like, battle brothers. I like that. I've always liked that. I love Viking stories and dragon stories. And for the oldest English story to end with a dragon, it's pretty sick.
True. Yeah. And, I mean, I know I'm going to just keep going into C.S. Lewis, but C.S. Lewis, when he talks about friendship, like, the way he words it is, friendship's not like I can't just find somebody, gaze into their eyes, and all of a sudden I feel friendship towards them. The way he says it, he's like if you want to be friends with a warrior, you're going to fight with them. If you want to be friends with a poet, you're going to read with them. If you're friends with a Christian, you're going to pray together. You're going to love other people together. You're going to work in community with one another, right? So I think this moment of like, here is Beowulf. His whole life, he was the warrior. He was the warrior king, right? Like, he was a just king. But the thing that I think made him feel most alive was just fighting bad guys. So in this moment, it really shows who was his true friends. It was those who said, all right, let's fight the dragon that we're clearly not going to beat. Yeah. And for those wondering.
Like, yeah, I would have done it. Maybe I was with Beowulf.
Yeah. Well, and if TJ is in a podcast debate with a dragon, like if Benedict Cucumberpatch got on as Smaug, and him and TJ were going to debate one another on a podcast, I would totally join TJ. I'd be on TJ's side.
Yeah, I wouldn't.
You wouldn't be on your own side?
No, as soon as you show up, I'm changing.
And then David Tennant will come help me out. It'll be perfect. Me and David Tennant versus TJ and Benedict Cucumberpatch. The epic podcast battle. I think that would be a correct use of the word epic, especially if he was still in the form of Smaug the whole time.
That would make it a little better.
Yeah. Oh, man. But so the other thing, though, is like legacy. What is the legacy of Beowulf? Because it talks about how his throne sat there afterwards. It talks about how, like, after his life, what happens. Does legacy matter? Does like, I think that's something I get stuck up on. Because, like, in all honesty, if I fall over dead right now, I could care less if you guys took my mic and put it on a pedestal somewhere or like kept it in a box of like, yeah, this is Josh's mic. We'll always remember the things he said on systematic. Like, I'm dead. I don't care, you know? But, yeah, I mean, there's different times. So maybe it's just like a time and culture thing. But like, does legacy still matter, you think?
I think it matters. I think it matters a little bit. I think what legacy really is at the end of the day is how much the people around you respect you.
Yeah. I think maybe the thing for me is like, I don't care if you talk about me per se, but I would hope some of my thoughts, my ideas impacted those around me enough that they will build on those ideas. You know what I mean? Like I could care less if you, Will, and Christian remembered my face. But if you guys were like, hey, yeah, when Joshua talked, he talked about how like we need to be more like an empty bowl. And here's what that means. And like you built on that. And then that somehow made it into like popular Christian zeitgeist, I'd be like, cool, sick. Like that's something I care about. But my name being remembered, okay, whatever. Yeah. I mean, do you feel similarly? Like if you were to fall over dead right now, would you care more that I kept saying TJ the best podcast host of all time? Or is there like, what would you care more that you would leave behind, I guess?
I'm dead.
Well, like, surely you hope in some way that you impacted people enough that, like, after you die, like, you made a difference, right?
Yeah. Well, I already know that happened. So
it doesn't really, you don't care after that.
yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, that's fair. So are we saying legacy just doesn't matter as much to us as it would to maybe the writer of this or people who would have originally read the story, probably?
Well, I think, 1,000 years ago, it was a lot harder to establish a legacy.
Yeah.
When
that's
most
true.
things were transmitted orally and records were rarely kept.
Yeah, that's
pretty
true.
hard.
I literally don't have to worry about people remembering what I said. They can literally just go click an audio file and hear it.
Yeah.
So to me, that worry has never existed for me in my lifetime. So I guess it's just never been something I valued.
Yeah.
Whereas, yeah, I guess in their time, it's literally like, if you didn't do something cool enough for someone to write a poem about, they're probably going to forget about you.
Yeah.
Yeah. True. Yeah, I wouldn't have thought of that. Interesting. Which is funny because that goes back to the technology part of the conversation. All right, so if you were to rank these three parts, the dragon, Grendel's mother, like what order would you put in like the coolness level from 1 to 3?
1, 3, 2. We're going Grendel, dragon, Grendel's mom.
See, I would go dragon, Grendel's mom.
Yeah.
And honestly, Grendel's mom could have been a lot cooler. I just feel like it didn't get the page space, you know?
Yeah.
Because something about Sea Witch, that's way cooler to me than Demon That Eats People. just the way it was written, I'm like, I could have skipped that part. I didn't really need it.
Yeah, it really doesn't add a whole lot.
Yeah. Yeah. So you're 1-3-2. I'm 3-1-2.
Mm-hmm.
We just agree that 2 was the worst part, though.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Cool.
Like there is, don't skip this. Don't skip the witch part.
Yeah. Don't skip it. but
Obviously,
You could.
no,
There's no
no,
reason
don't.
to.
No, you can't skip it. You need to know. It's
All
just the least awesome.
Interesting. Yeah. Okay. So since this is an epic, I feel like we should talk about why it matters that it's an epic. How do you think the story is impacted by it being like in that poetry format, like rather than it just being like a little storybook?
I think it definitely helps with its longevity. It aids, I feel, to the memorability of Beowulf. If you read Beowulf a few times, you're a lot more likely to remember a lot more of it than if it was just a book.
Mm-hmm.
That's how I feel, at least. That's the way poetry helps in this sort of thing, because poems generally are easy to remember because the prose just kind of encourages your brain to remember it.
Yeah. I think something you said earlier really gets to me also. So I have 2 answers to this. One is something you said earlier where like usually it doesn't rhyme, like it's not that kind of poem, but when it's like the important bits, they will rhyme, so it stands out more because it's able to do that. And I think if it was a story, you wouldn't really be able to do that in like a normal paragraph. So I think that helps. I think the other thing, and this is where it's like what I mean when I say poem and story is harder to do in audiobook, they're able to use the blank space on the page a little easier, I feel like. Because, you know, where the paragraphs are when it's written in poetry, there's just a lot more blank space. So for me, when I listened to the audiobook, because I listened to the audiobook for this and then I read it 2 or 3 times, I don't remember. I went through the story a lot the last couple of months. In the audiobook, it just kind of feels like Grendel's mother happens and then this stuff happens and then this and then this happens and then this happens. But if you're like sitting there with like my Kindle's what I'm using and I just get to the end of Grendel's mother and it's like 50 years and it's like that 50 years thing is almost its own paragraph and it's already written where it's like poetry, so half the page is blank. So you have all this blank space really allows it to breathe a little bit better, I feel like, before you're able to move on to like the next act in the story.
Yeah, and if it's like, if you're listening to this thing, wow, that guy sounds stupid.
I am.
You should go read House of Leaves. They do a lot with page space in House of Leaves.
Yeah. What's funny is I'm going to plug our other podcast. TJ and I are going to be talking about another story, Indigo, The Color of Grief, on the Whole Church podcast. It gets into a little bit of theopoetics and that kind of theology stuff. I listened to it as an audiobook first because I just wasn't convinced I was going to want to take the time to read it physically, and I was very wrong. And he does a lot of that, where like he writes most of the story is all lowercase, and like he even like has some of the letters get bigger and smaller as like thoughts fade away, and then like he'll use blank space, and it's really interesting because in that the author is Jonathan Foster. He even talks about art that has blank space, and sometimes the blank space says more than the actual art itself. And it's funny because when he's describing that in the audiobook, you're like, okay, yeah, that makes sense. And then you're like reading it in the book, and I'm like, oh, there is just a ton of blank space on this page, and he is right. You know? Yeah. I'm not an art analyst. I probably could say this smarter if I was, but hopefully people know what I mean. Maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. All right, favorite translations of this story. I've mentioned before mine is Tolkien. It's still Tolkien. It's because Tolkien does this thing where like he makes it rhyme the parts that should rhyme, and he doesn't dumb it down a lot. So for me, that's my big problem with the Seamus Heaney, if that's how you say it, translation. I feel like it's just dumb. Like the language itself is dumbed down so much that I'm like, I feel like I'm just reading like, what if this story was written by a 5th grader? I don't want that. Tolkien still makes it where like you got to use your big boy brain to read it, without like the original version where it's like you have to learn a whole new language really for this to make sense, you know?
Yeah. I don't know. It is really funny though, because Tolkien has his critics, and the way this happened was Tolkien released his essay on translating Beowulf. He was like, hey guys, this really stinks. And in his translation, yeah, of course people read it, and they were like, Chris, you messed up. But, you know, it's not perfect because we're translating from Old English to English, so even someone like Tolkien going through this there are some times where it's just not feasible to keep in the alliterative verse at all times, or the Old English meter, which is different. So
Yeah, I feel like, see, that's the thing I didn't have the word for. The meter is like, since it is written in poem form, I feel like it's the trickiest part to get right, because I'm trying to remember. There was one version I read that wasn't Seamus Reaney or Tolkien's version. There was another one that I read that I was like, this is just not, like, it just felt wrong. Like, it's not that like the words or anything was wrong. What was it? It might have been the okay. Sorry, I'm on Amazon now, so it looks like it might have been the Maria Headley translation. That might have been what I read. That I was like, it just, something about the timing felt wrong. Like, I just didn't have the words for it. I don't know. Yeah, but what about you? Do you have a favorite translation of Beowulf?
I mean, I have the translation of Beowulf that I own, that I read the most, which is Howell Chickering Jr. It's good. It's pretty much just a raw translation.
Yeah. But also, has anyone seen the cover for the J.R.R. Tolkien Beowulf? At least the one that you can get on Amazon? Because, like, it's cool. I'm trying to find it so I can put it up here. Is this a bad use of my time right now?
Maybe a little bit.
I'm going to do it anyway. Share screen. Amazon. Here, guys. Look at that. Like, that's just cool looking. Everyone should get that just because it looks cool. And it has Selic Spell. It's not part of what we're talking about today, but it's worth a read, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Anyway, TJ.
There's Beowulf. That's him.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. So let's go ahead and wrap this one up then. If you're good, do you have anything else you need to say about the story or the translations, format, anything?
No, Beowulf's cool.
Yeah, Beowulf is the second coolest man to ever live. So. All right. So our bonus question, if you stick around or if you go over to Patreon, you give us $3 to go to our local library, then you can hear us answer the question of, would we rather fight the dragon from Beowulf or Smaug from The Hobbit?
Smaug.
We'll get into that later. But I want to recommend a kind of literature other than... Well, you're not supposed to answer here, TJ.
I'm not. I'm just correcting you.
Okay. Oh, okay. If we are both going to recommend a kind of literature other than the kind we talked about today. So I'm going to recommend a book that isn't an epic. And then TJ is going to recommend something that's not an epic for you to go read. Man, I'm going to cheat because it's also a poem story, but it's not an epic based on how we defined it today because there's no hero involved. I actually do think everyone needs to go get Indigo, The Color of Grief. It's an incredibly short read, but I think it can reshape how you think of God and the world altogether without changing your doctrine. It'll just kind of challenge you in, like, how do I make sense of the world and interact with others? I think it's a really good read, so that's going to be my recommendation. TJ, what about
you? Name of the Wind by Patrick Rothfuss. I was talking about it with James the other day, and I'm like, yep. Need to get more people to read that. It's so good. Fantastic.
I like it. I dig it. All right, guys. Again, if you're on a laptop, remember, please consider to rate and review our show on Podchaser or Good Pods. One of those two, Podchaser or Good Pods. That's going to help our show gain recognition, and it's going to make it easier to find on search engines like Google because they like those websites for some reason. If you're on your phone, though, consider rating, reviewing, or commenting on our show on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. Those are the two main podcast apps that people use. So if you rate, review, comment on those, it's going to help other people who use those apps when they search to find our show. Trick everyone into thinking our show is important for us. We believe in deception, and we appreciate it. All right. And again, we're going to support one of our supporters, Russell Gentry. You rock. And if you guys want to be like Russell, which you should, and get your own shout out, all you got to do is support our show for $3 a month on either Apple Podcasts, Captivate, or Patreon. So consider doing that. Be like Russell. He's cool. And remember, if you want to hear all of our All Reading Counts episodes of the different kinds of literature we've done, we've talked about graphic novels, manga, short stories, novelette. I think we did novelette already, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah. If you guys want to hear all that, go check it out. That link, it's got the whole playlist. It's pretty cool. I've enjoyed all of the episodes in this series so far. If you get any of our merch or anything that says All Reading Counts on it, or if you get that bonus episode, again, please consider doing that. All the profit will be going to our local library. We like our libraries and want them to get more books for us to read. So, only thing we have left for you at that point then, all this said, all the legwork out of the way, we just need you to remember you're cared for, you're loved, and remember that you're all a chosen people. A geekdom of priests. Later.